All right, another day in paradise, although it is raining, very wet here in paradise in San Francisco. 49ers, two more games to go this season. And the big question right now that I seem to be getting from all over the place, text messages, Twitter mentions, Instagram comments, you name it, is why are the 49ers playing Brock Purdy behind this offensive line? And in case you've been living under a rock or in case you've just decided to tune out and not pay attention to the messy ending of this 49ers season, this is the situation with the offensive line. I'm not even using injury shadings anymore because I'm already looking forward toward the offseason. But as of today, because Trent Williams is now officially on injured reserve, this is what the 49ers active offensive line looks like. Now, Aaron Banks is not yet on IR, but he's not available. So, and Spencer Burford might not be available either on Sunday. So there's a chance if I temporarily use injury shadings here for Burford and Aaron Banks, there is a chance, and it seems to be a solid one, that Charlie Heck or Austin Pleasance, two guys who were not on the team 2 weeks ago, are starting at left tackle in front of Brock Purdy. Colton McKivitz at right tackle. Jake Brendel is the center. They just added Matt Hennessy today, former third-round pick of the Falcons. He's going to be the emergency backup at center because Nick Zakelj has to start at guard in place of Aaron Banks. So because you've got this offensive line that is potentially featuring Charlie Heck, Nick Zakelj, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, and Colton McKivitz, people are wondering, why are the 49ers going to continue running Brock Purdy out there? As much as anything, it's a matter of principle. Teams across the entire league deal with non-ideal situations. A lot of teams deal with non-ideal situations, even with their starting 5 offensive linemen all healthy. There's just been a proliferation of great edge rushing talent, great defensive tackle talent, athletic, capable players at those positions, and it's outpaced what the offensive line has had to offer. That's a football-wide thing. I'm looking forward to the correction. Maybe that's going to happen over the next decade or so in football, where better athletes start to populate the offensive line and they could start counteracting some of these really speedy athletic rushers. But there's never going to be a perfect situation. And Fred Warner today said that it's a matter of integrity of the game. If you're healthy, you play. He wasn't specifically talking about Brock Purdy. He was talking about himself. He's dealing with the broken ankle, but same blanket reason why Fred Warner is playing on a broken, fractured ankle to finish out this season, even though the 49ers playoff hopes are extinguished. Same reason applies to Brock Purdy going out there, even if the offensive line may not be at 50%, 60%. I don't know what their effectiveness is going to be. I think they can scrounge together a good 60, 65% though. But it's about the integrity of the game. It's about the culture of the building. You continue playing when you can continue playing. You don't just shut it down early. A lot of people wonder about tanking and football. Tanking and football are not synonymous. In fact, I don't think it'd be possible in football because so many players are on non-guaranteed contracts. It is a constant audition in the NFL for players. Every single time a guy puts a rep on tape, that is his resume. That's the latest line on his resume. And in a league where the acronym NFL could stand for not for long, the most recent lines on your resume are the most meaningful ones. So there are going to be a ton of players, and here I could show you the guys who are under contract for the 49ers next year. They're shaded in green, or in the case of Spencer Burford, he's shaded here in that reddish color. But there are a lot of players, as you can see across the whole roster, who are not under contract for next season. And even the guys who are under contract for next season are playing to add better lines to their resume, the most recent part of it, so that they can have more leverage next season, so they can ensure the 49ers won't cut them next season, because a lot of the money is non-guaranteed. A precious few players have guaranteed money beyond this season on the 49ers roster. So on the aggregate, tanking is not a thing in the NFL. And if you want to zoom in even further, individual players have to go out there and put stuff on tape. And then if you want to just look at this holistically in the locker room, NFL teams rely on culture year in, year out, especially under their existing regimes. I can point back to 2017 when the 49ers fought to the end of the season, and that helped carry over to the energy that they needed to go to the Super Bowl once they were healthy enough and stocked up enough talent-wise in 2019. So Kyle Shanahan today delved into it. He said, if you're already thinking in terms of packing it in and not putting your best football on tape, you're closer to the ending than you are to the start of your time in the NFL. The league has constructed a culture and a framework within which that has to be your mental outlook. You have to be thinking about putting the best tape on film every single week. On top of that, Kyle Shanahan today said that this could be good for Brock Purdy because he dealt with non-ideal situations in the great season that he had, 2023. Remember the playoffs where the 49ers were leaking oil in both of those games against the Packers and the Lions, and Purdy was forced to fight from behind. You talk about player safety and you talk about a quarterback being exposed to more hits. Well, whenever you're behind in a football game, even if your offensive line has all 5 starters up there, defenses are going to be pinning their ears back. And as I said, defensive line talent has outpaced offensive line talent in the modern game. Well, you're going to be taking some hits in the NFL. Purdy was in such a situation in both playoff games last year against the Packers and against the Lions, and he was able to prevail. Obviously, showed the 49ers a whole heck of a lot. He's been in such situations throughout the course of this season. The line has really never fully been healthy over the course of this season because when Trent Williams was in there week 1, his tongue was cramping up, literally, because he hadn't practiced over the course of training camp. So the 49ers weren't firing at 100% then. So if it wasn't even 100% in week 1, and now you look at the decimation of the line now, you could safely say, well, you're never going to have something perfectly set up for you in the National Football League. And when that is the truth week in and week out in this league, you can at least take the situations that you are given and the opportunities that you do get to play to sharpen your skills, to situationally prepare yourself for when the action does actually matter in terms of playoff positioning. Because in 2025, the 49ers are going to be right back at base camp, ready to climb Everest again. And Kyle Shanahan firmly does believe, and I think that all of NFL history does agree with him here, that fighting through situations, even if you're eliminated from the playoffs, those situations that are not ideal can actually help sharpen you as a player so that you're ready to go for the situations that are much more ideal. So that's the way that the 49ers are looking at this with Brock Purdy, and I think that essentially every team would look at this the same way. The one time when players do get rest in the NFL is when a team is on the opposite end of the spectrum as the 49ers right now. It's when you hit week 18, you've already locked up the playoff berth, and you want to make sure that you're ready to go for whatever round that you play in come January. But the 49ers obviously aren't there right now. This is very much a culture situation for the 49ers. They do want to fight until the end. Even if they lose these games against the Lions and the Cardinals, they see that they can get some benefit from playing to win, because that is what is at the very core of how this league works and how the 49ers believe that they've built their team to work. Anyway, 49ers news for today. Brock Purdy, yes, he's going to be playing behind that decimated offensive line. We'll see Burford and his status later this week. Did not practice today with the calf issue. As I said, Banks done. We've already seen Jalen Moore and Trent Williams both moved to injured reserve. Talked to Matthew Hennessy in the locker room today. Made the flight over after being poached off of Atlanta's practice squad on Christmas Eve. Didn't land until about 3 or 4 a.m. Christmas morning in San Francisco. And now he is with the 49ers as their backup center entering this game against the Detroit Lions. Injuries for the 49ers, especially along the offensive line. They may be healing up elsewhere. Somebody like Isaac Guerendo was a limited participant today at practice. I think that would be a boost for the 49ers as they try to beat the Lions again on Monday night. Detroit, meanwhile, they're really, really injured across the defensive side of the ball. A lot of people were surprised when they saw that the Lions were only 3.5-point favorites for this game. Well, over their past 3 games, they've played the Packers, they've played the Bills, and they played the Chicago Bears. They gave up 31 to the Packers. It's a lot. to give up to anybody. Anytime you give up over 30 in the NFL, it's quite the allowance. Then they gave up, what was it, 40 plus to the Buffalo Bills, 48 to the Buffalo Bills. So Bills nearly hung 50 on them. And they gave up 17 to Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. And we know that Caleb Williams has not been good this year. And the Bears offense hasn't been good this year. I mean, that was a team that the 49ers routed. I think it was a better defensive performance last week for the Lions, but this decimated unit, which saw this injury attrition really take full hold when Aiden Hutchinson, their great edge rusher, went down. This injury decimated unit will give up yards. The question is, will they give up points? And that is also the question for the 49ers offense, because it is a dichotomy that I think that we've rarely seen in NFL history. This gives you an idea of how weird the season has been for the 49ers. First off, take a look at this. This is the explosive play rates of NFL offenses and defenses. So you want to be in the upper right. I have to try to get this up to full screen really quickly. You want to be in the upper right of this chart. Let's see if I could take the photo. There we go. Give me 1 second to pop this open. I have the 49ers depth chart in there, but not this. Here we go. All right. Now we're all set to go. So you want to be on the upper right of this chart because that signifies that the offensive explosive play rate is good. Further to the right, that's measured on moving from left to right on the x-axis. And then you want to be further up. That means that your defense is not giving up as many explosive plays. 49ers defense, believe it or not, has actually given up the fewest explosive plays in football. That's why they have the highest spot on the y-axis here. And the offense has the third highest explosive play rate in the league, behind only Baltimore and Green Bay, just ahead of the Lions, who they're about to play. So consider this. Consider the fact that the 49ers have still managed to produce all kinds of explosive plays on the season. And then consider some of their corresponding struggles. Wait until I put this up. This right here is the 49ers' red zone efficiency. They've moved from the upper right when it comes to explosive play rate to the lower left when it comes to red zone efficiency. X-axis is points per red zone trip, so that's red zone offense. 49ers below average there, circling their logo. And when it comes to points per red zone trip allowed on defense, 49ers are the second worst team in the league. Only Dallas has been a bad or worse red zone defense. So somehow, some way, the 49ers have been great in generating explosive plays offensively and great in stopping them, but they have simultaneously been bad in turning their explosive plays into points once they get into the red zone and stopping opposing offenses from scoring once they get into the red zone. I have never seen this stark of a difference before. I mean, I would understand if the 49ers were in the middle of the cluster in one of these, but they are essentially on extreme ends. They're in the upper right where you want to be in explosive play rate, and they are down here in the lower left when it comes to their red zone efficiency. It has just been a weird season for the 49ers. On top of that, add this to the, I mean, those two things are true. Add a third thing that's true that just doesn't really compute. The 49ers have the lowest average separation at the time of catch or incompletion of any team in the NFL. Despite that, they have had an explosive offense, despite the fact that the separation grades have been so poor. I guess it would make sense when you combine it with the red zone efficiency. Yeah, if you have poor separation, it's going to be a lot harder to score in the red zone, but it doesn't really make sense with the explosiveness. I think it does show that Brock Purdy is making something out of what is often nothing for the 49ers. This whole conglomeration of stats. I mean, obviously, there's quite a bit broken with the 49ers offensive product. We've talked about that with the screen passes and the separation. They're finally throwing more screens, but they're still not scoring in the red zone. I think if you want to make some sort of reason out of this entire mess, this conflicting mess, you can say, hey, Brock Purdy has made something out of nothing when the 49ers have literally had nothing there. I would go as far as to say when the 49ers offense has been good this year, it has been because of Brock Purdy. They haven't always been good, but the quarterback has had to strain through and get them to that spot. The play caller rankings that we check in on from Patent Analytics frequently continue to tell a similar story. And that story is this one. Kyle Shanahan is down at number 18 this season. Shanahan had previously been a consistent top 5 guy. So for whatever reason, the 49ers aren't gaining as much of an advantage through the X's and O's at the line of scrimmage. That's probably related to some of the losses in personnel. It's hard to scheme around the loss of personnel. Obviously, the injuries have compounded other things. And then we talk about the decimated offensive line. Well, that definitely hurt the 49ers' efficiency, even though Brock Purdy was still good against the Miami Dolphins. Problems in football, since it is the sport of organized chaos, are rarely simple to illustrate, which is why it's so important to look at nuance. You can't just sit there and yell, Purdy's terrible or Jake Brendel's terrible. Brendel had not played well this year. Purdy has, but Brendel hasn't. But that's still not the only issue of the 49ers offense. We can go through the play caller rankings. We can go through the separation troubles for San Francisco. We can obviously look at Brendel, but we also need to simultaneously examine Aaron Banks, who's playing on the left side of him. We've seen Dominic Pooney raise the profile of the 49ers right side of the offensive line, which was terrible last year. I think that's helped Colton McKivitz, but then we've seen the regression at center and left guard. It's like one of those games of whack-a-mole, right? They had them back at Chuck E. Cheese. I remember when I was young. And you're always just trying to whack the mole that pops up. And you hit one down, but another one pops up somewhere else. And I think in the game of football with a struggling team, especially a team that's struggling in a type of weird fashion that the 49ers are struggling in, the problems are often at multiple different spots. And you need something like the rising tide that lifts all boats. You need something that will help multiple positions. That's going to be your closest to a one-stop fix. And I think that the center position is what I've zeroed in on, because center is a conduit between the coaching staff when it comes to identifying protections, looking at the safety rotations and doing all that. Center is something that can help both the play caller, because the play caller looks better when the offensive line is correctly diagnosed the protections, help simultaneously help the quarterback in the cerebral aspect as well, but it can also physically help by making the linemen on either side of the center position that much better. If center can absorb a 5-man rush on 3rd and long, with minimal help needed from the guards to the sides, everybody looks better. So I that's why I always point at center as something that the 49ers have in the past decided to pay for with Weston Richburg and Alex Mack. And then today, the news of Matt Hennessy joining the 49ers on a 2-year deal. I say that's going to be a position that the 49ers really work to improve over this offseason. And they hope that that's going to have compounding positive effects for this team across the whole roster. Anyway, let's go to 49ers Q&A. That's your 49ers news for the day. I've got a meeting with the trainer in just a few minutes, like my own trainer, not the training staff of the 49ers. So I'm going to have to get going here in just a couple, but we'll answer a few of your questions. While we're here, sign up for the San Francisco Standard, sfstandard.com/memberships. You can take a look at all of the great work that Tim is putting up there. And then I have all my stuff. We are starting to transition fully into off-season mode here as we analyze the 49ers. So go ahead and post your questions, and we will go from there. Rick asks, is it against NFL rules for players to practice on their own during the offseason? No, it's not. It's what Alex Smith had, Camp Alex at San Jose State. I think Jimmy Garoppolo did a little bit of that. I think they met at San Jose State. They also did the whole Nashville meetup, right? That was during the 2020 offseason. The coaching staff wasn't there. It wasn't sponsored officially by the 49ers. But players, if they want to get together and throw the football around and practice, that they can do that. And offensive players have done that in the past. Does the rash of injuries correlate with the departure of the 49ers head strength guy, really the head sports medicine and strength guy, Ben Peterson, who left before this season? I don't think so, because they had a lot of injuries over the past few seasons. 2022, I think they even ranked number 1 in man games lost. They were a little bit healthier in 2023. 2020 was obviously really bad for the 49ers. I just think in general, there are a couple rules here. One, the 49ers are playing a ton of games every single season. So this year, they're finally going to have that break throughout most of January and February, which is probably good for the healing processes of this team. But 60 games over 3 seasons entering this one, there's going to be wear and tear. There's going to be some level of exhaustion. I think that definitely afflicted the 49ers this year. 2, the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan have really been a physical football team. The philosophy has been ultra violent defense, but on offense, they've wanted speed and physicality. They wanted running backs who are able to hit that one cut in the outside zone, but they also have emphasized yak year after year. They led the NFL in yak and yards after contact in every season before this one. So I think when that happens, naturally, you're asking for more bruises. You're asking for some more injuries. Depth is going to be super important, right? So you can't sit there and blame a training staff, especially since these guys don't work with these players all year round. Players are doing a lot of work away from the facility. You can't just simplistically say fire the training staff, especially when there have been good, healthy years under this staff as well. 2019 comes to mind. 2023 was, I thought, remarkably healthy. 49ers had a couple guys on IR by the end of it, but I still remember doing the Super Bowl injury report from the Aria Hotel in Las Vegas. Nobody on that injury report for the 49ers. So they got that team to where it needed to be before the Super Bowl. And this year there's been some reversion in terms of the injury luck. That makes it all the more frustrating that the 49ers could not seal the deal and get the job done in last season's Super Bowl. Why would the 49ers wait for Arch Manning when they've got their franchise quarterback in Brock Purdy? I mean, people need to accept reality. Brock Purdy is a really good QB. Brock Purdy is going to make somewhere, if you want to go by average per year, between $50 and $60 million, maybe even upwards of 60. Just depends on how they structure it. I frankly don't care, but I'm just telling you how this is going to work. And Brock Purdy is going to be the centerpiece of the 49ers for the foreseeable future. Then his success is going to be dependent, just like it has been for any quarterback in the history of the NFL. It's going to be dependent on the team that the 49ers can build around him. There has been no quarterback ever that's been able to succeed on a bad team in the National Football League. Ever. It's just never happened. Teams that have won championships have been good teams. And that's how it's going to have to be with Brock Purdy. But every single objective measure, and I'm saying use your eyes and use your trained eyes. Don't act like a fan who's never seen football before, and also stop acting like a fan. Act like somebody who's watching this game with some level of seriousness. Any set of trained eyes plus any objective measurement of statistics or performance in an advanced way will tell you that Brock Purdy is a good quarterback and that the 49ers should not waver in their belief in him, and they're not. I'm explaining strategy. That's how it's going to work with Brock Purdy moving forward. I think people need to get out of their emotions and stop talking about Arch Manning in 2026. Just doesn't make any sense from anybody's perspective, because that's just not how the league works, and that's not how the 49ers are constructed right now. Tommy says Purdy's trying to play hero ball too much. Well, probably because he has to. Probably because the team around him they were giving up pressure up the A gap over and over again off those stunts against Miami. And when that happens, well, the only way that the play is not going to be a negative play is if you do play hero ball. You have to run around a little bit. So again, we go back to square one. It's a team sport. Everybody's got to be pulling in the same direction. You can't have some of the deficiencies that the 49ers have had this year. Purdy has done really, really well to stay in the top 10 of QBR. Somebody who was overrated last year was CJ Stroud. Everybody thought he was better than Purdy. He wasn't. Purdy was number 1 in QBR. Stroud was number 15. Stroud has dropped to under number 25 this year, just for some perspective. So Purdy from 1 to 10 because everything around him has crumbled. Stroud from 15 to under number 25. So, and I don't see anybody right now saying, oh, well, CJ Stroud probably is not going to be the Texans' future. They should be saying that because he's a bottom 5 quarterback this year, but they're not. So there's real draftism at play here. We need to start actually focusing on what players have put on tape instead of trying to find imaginary physical attributes that you don't like. Go and look to see how they play the position. Purdy has played it well throughout his entire career. The percentage of bad games that he's had have been minuscule. The most recent one was the game against the Rams for the 49ers on Thursday night, but it's been tiny compared to the larger sample, and that's just the reality of the situation. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Time for me to go work out. We will talk to you very soon.